I'm reading a story here from the Associated Press before we call Dan Gainor, and I've just got to say something about this in a moment. North Carolina inmates win payouts over prison violence. I want you to think about that as I begin the program here on Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107, AM 1240. As always, we're going to be joined here shortly by Dan Gainor of Newsbusters, newsbusters.org. But this is a story that I just sort of, I've got to make comment about. I'm not necessarily looking for comment from the audience. However, you're welcome to do so if you'd like to give us a call. 252 area code 247-7282. And, of course, the toll-free number 800-818-2255. But that local number, 252 area code 247-7282. And, of course, via email at Viewpoints with an S, viewpointsradio@hotmail.com, and via Facebook at Viewpoints on the talk station. As always, of course, to remind you of our sponsors, Advanced Water Systems, the people that bring you Connecticut folks that are practically reinventing water, and Advanced Office Solutions, committed to making the business the one that you're building successful. Let me just start with Advanced Office Solutions very quickly for a moment and just remind you that if you're running a business that needs to be very cautious about the bottom line and in the process providing excellent service, I cannot recommend enough Advanced Office Solutions. We rely on them here, and I know so many other businesses do as well. Family-owned business, but they have so many services they can offer. They are the linear dealer for our area, all linear products and services you can trust to Advanced Office Solutions. As always, the local number, 252-393-1112. That's 393-1112. Or go online to advosi.com. Integrity, reliability, and affordability. You're a linear dealer for our area, all linear products and services, but so much more that you can get from Advanced Office Solutions, networking solutions, and arrangements related to equipment leases as well. 393-1112. And as always, to remind you, integrity, reliability, and affordability. Advanced Office Solutions, a local supplier of linear products. They do business with you the way you want to do business with them. As I prepare to bring Dan Gainor on, I'm looking at this AP story, and I've just got to make a quick comment. North Carolina taxpayers are paying 3 former inmates at one of the state's most dangerous prisons $62,500 to settle lawsuits claiming the former warden and supervisors wouldn't clamp down on murderous gangs who terrorized them. Now, I'm not dismissing the challenges of running a prison, but folks, this is a prison of bad people. I don't know how the warden and crew are going to be able to protect. Listen, if there's an incentive not to go to prison, this is it. All right, I just had to emote on that one. Let me get Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org with us. Dan, good afternoon. I had to remark on a story that is appearing in the AP here in North Carolina. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, and although people may have heard her name occasionally, Julia says hi.
That's right. Thank you very much. All right, let's talk here before we go to the break. Anybody digging holes there in Virginia? I mean, they keep digging. I don't get it.
I think they're all the way to China, as they used to say, or if Donald Trump would say China.
Yeah.
But they're and I don't say that to mock. It actually cracks me up every time the president says it that way. So I'm not gonna, that's how I remember it now. But I mean, pretty much this is. Racism is awful, and
no question.
Certainly a sexual assault allegation is even worse. And so while it is easy to see the dark humor in this, I understand that many people don't.
Right.
And, that said, I look at news for a living. I grew up in a first responder home, and, we tend to see the dark, the dark humor in things. And when you've already got a situation where the governor, is in a disastrous situation, holds possibly the worst press conference in the history of mankind.
Absolutely.
I mean, certainly it's on a competitive level with the press conferences that Baghdad Bob was doing about the Saddam Hussein administration. I mean, that's how bad it was. And then you find out that the next likely candidate, we're going to have this, really well-liked, well-respected African-American lieutenant governor his last name is even the name of a Virginia county.
Uh-huh.
And, he's got sex crime allegations against him. Well, there's always the third guy. and then the very next day, it comes out that the third guy, the attorney general, was meeting with black legislators, and they were downcast because he apparently was telling them he did the same thing. He had also had a blackface incident. So then, because it's not done yet, then it comes out that the lieutenant governor was in a private meeting and referred to the woman who made the allegations in a
using
pejorative way.
Yes, using
I'm going to say
double explicit. Yeah,
blank that blank.
Right. We'll leave it.
And you can fill in the blanks, and you'll probably be right. Using the B word for women, it could have been worse, but still not exactly the marketing you want for the touchy-feely Me Too era. Then, of course, you find out on a national level that, the Elizabeth Warren stuff, faux Kahanas, has finally completely crashed and burned, and everything she's ever told us about not really claiming she was Native American, advantaging her career about it, turns out complete lie. Turns out Donald Trump was shockingly right.
Right.
Then there's, I can never pronounce this woman's name, there's Amy Klobuchar, who's also running for president. Turns out not one, not two, but three prominent Democrat staffers refused to work for her because apparently she's so awful to work for. This, of course, falls into the category of disaster when you're also dealing with the abortion disaster the left has got that is so awful that literally they've proven Donald Trump right from the debates where he was talking about how Hillary Clinton was so awful she wanted to rip babies from the womb right before they were born. That turns out entirely that's a Democratic strategy. And I mean, this is all in the space of like 2 weeks.
I know.
There's other. It turns out apparently the alleged victim, the lieutenant governor, turns out she apparently told at least one member of Congress who's also a Democrat.
Right.
And then just because Republicans, when somebody throws a grenade this large into a room, some shrapnel's going to get the Republicans too. So the editor of one of the yearbook that had all the offensive photos in it, it turns out that editor is a state senator. And so he's also now been implicated in all that.
We're going to take a quick break. With that litany of events, I want to talk with you about this, Dan, in relationship to two things. How far back into people's history are we going to delve? And in the process now, I'm going to set the lieutenant governor's events aside, okay? But all the others, how far back in history are we going to delve? And my question for you, Dan, when we get back, is the impact of social media. Because if we're looking now at print sources, which apparently haven't been highly scrutinized in the past, we chatted about this last week, opposition research never finding that egregious page in the governor's yearbook, which was stunning. How far back? We saw it initiated with the Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Now my question to you is how far back and what are all the other sources? Stay with us here on Viewpoints. Our guest this evening, Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org, here on Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. Taylor, I just have to mention we got to talk about that last bumper, the Macarena. But anyhow, another time. We've got Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org here with us this afternoon. And Dan, Before we get to my question, just share with us the breaking news you just shared with me a moment ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, here we are talking about the litany of problems. And so I'm going to say this with the caveat that I'm a firm believer people are innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
I really am. And I defended Kavanaugh because I thought there was no proof of Kavanaugh. And so I'm going to take the same position with Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. But, again, here, when you start to pile on the numbers, that becomes a problem. And here comes round two for Fairfax. Here's the lead from the AP. Further roiling Richmond after a week of scandal. Lawyers allege Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax raped a classmate at Duke University in 2000. The law firm representing the woman, everybody's got a law firm,
right.
Sent a letter detailing the allegations to Virginia state lawmakers, further plunging the capital into crisis. And here's what it says. We serve as counsel for Meredith Watson, who was raped by Justin Fairfax in 2000. Mr. Fairfax's attack was premeditated and aggressive. They two were friends but never dated or had any romantic relationship. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm going to live in the real world. I'm not going to attempt to address this particular instance,
right?
But because none of us know. Well, hopefully, if a crime occurred, justice will also occur, and if no crime occurred, justice will also occur for that. But I certainly know that there's a lot of gray area in between those two, and I mean, look, I remember even in my time in college, I knew of people who were both people involved in a situation who would hook up together, would get drunk.
Well, okay.
And by today's standards, apparently both people in those situations were guilty of a sex crime.
I want to
as opposed to both guilty of stupidity.
I want to get to this from another perspective, and it's related to the rush for judgment. And I've got to bring up another story here. But before I do, and I want to talk also about the issue of how far back we go into delve into a background for negative reports. But let me go to a quick call here. Ernie in Emerald Isle. Ernie, good evening. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Lockwood, Dan, I think we're forgetting what the reason for this topic is.
Okay.
The topic should be about this evil so-called doctor.
Okay.
Who spouses infanticide.
Who happens to be the governor.
Colleagues have ratted him out.
Oh, okay. So
let's think about that. I mean, all the racial black, that's all bad stuff. We know that, but it never would have seen the light of day had not he made those the outrageous statements.
Okay, that's your theory.
I think that's a really wonderful point. What has happened here, and in fact, I saw Eric Wemple, who does media coverage for the Washington Post. He raised a question that I'll get to in a second. What's happened here is the pebble that caused the avalanche. Except it wasn't a pebble in this case; it was a freaking meteor.
Uh-huh.
You had the New York incident where they approved a bill to allow murder of babies after they're born. The late-term abortion bill in New York. It was so heinous, and they celebrated it so much that it was widely criticized, and apparently it genuinely upset the President of the United States. And then they fast forward into the delegate describing a similar bill in Virginia, and Delegate Tran, and she was so inept and so heinous in her answers that the thing went viral. Then Northam responded. The governor of Virginia responded defending her because the left is so extreme that they think that they can defend murdering babies and not have anybody upset about it. And so that series of events led to one of the classmates of Northam saying, well, if you can do this, I ain't going to stick it to you. And then that has resulted in just an avalanche of disaster for the Democratic Party in Virginia. Here, Virginia is so close between blue and red. I mean, ultimately, everyone needs to understand Virginia is a government state now, as such, because it's a suburb of Washington. And so all the growth is in the suburbs, not in the rural areas that tend to vote for Republicans. So Virginia literally was a 50-50 state in the legislature last time, so much so that I think they basically did the equivalent of flipping a coin to see which party ended up in charge. And now, no matter what happens, we are in February and elections in November. No matter what happens this year, if the Democrats are all swept aside and Republicans take over, if Democrats don't allow themselves to be all swept aside, or they replace people, whatever it is, the Republicans are going to be running on this. And if I were them, I'd be running on it in every African-American community in Virginia.
And because,
I would have flyers out there that say, look, Republican Party is the party that freed slaves.
Not only that,
Democratic Party was the party of the Klan.
Not only
Here
that,
we are, 150 years later, and guess what? Democratic Party is still the party of the Klan.
But here's the real kicker, Dan, and I pardon me for interrupting. And Ernie, thanks very much for your call.
Wait
a moment, Bernie. Okay.
I'm
as
patient as could be.
Good. I'm glad you are. One other aspect of this, Dan, it's a twofer related to the African American community. Number one, the vast majority of the abortions are perpetrated on African American children. That's a big issue too, in addition to the issue of blackface. All right, back to you, Ernie.
Lockwood, you didn't invite comments about prison inmates. You know still
you're breaking up.
Conversation with you that would probably change your mind.
Okay.
You'd like to have that at some time, on air or off air? I'd like to hear from you.
You've got it. Off air. We'll do it. Thank you very much, Ernie. Appreciate that. All right.
So then to make the further point that I wanted to make, Eric Wemple raised the issue, are there a lot of similar stories that are not getting reported because local journalism has collapsed so much around the country? And I made the counterpoint that basically journalists never do these stories anyhow. That journalism is all about access. And if you cover a beat and you start betraying that, oh, yes, this legislator did something bad 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, or this chief of staff is sleeping with one of his employees. Well, when you write those stories, nobody talks to you anymore.
Right.
And so what happens is those stories of low-grade incompetence and corruption almost never get reported by the press because the institutions that they cover are so powerful that nobody dare rock the vote. Now, and that's everyone. That's colleges. That's industry. That's all these areas are so influential that there aren't that many reporters, and it's very easy to say, "Oh, I'm not talking to this one. I'll talk to that one." There was a case, H.L. Mencken, in his early career, famous journalist in his early career, was covering the docks in Baltimore. And he and two other guys were writing doc stories, which were horrible and boring. It was an awful beat. Nobody wanted to do it. And so Mencken came up with an idea to get from that. And he said, why don't we just make up stories? Mm-hmm. And so he convinced one of the other reporters to make up stories. And so they made up stories. And the third reporter wouldn't agree to it. So he started using the regular stories. They used the made-up stories. Nobody knew any different. And so the third reporter got yelled at by his editor. Well, come up with these stories. He said, well, they're making them up. He said, I want to see these stories. So he agreed.
Well, here's the other aspect of this. And going into the issue of the depth of character of our candidates, our legislators, the other aspect of this, Dan, and I'm going to say in the issue of, well, the blackface, it's the creation of news, if you will. This is something that, inappropriate action 20, 30, 40 years ago. I still go back to the impact that we're going to see as a result of social media. But the other aspect of this, and to your point related to Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, there is this rush to judgment for certain individuals. And the one that still sticks in my craw badly is the Duke lacrosse students and how.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I am hesitant to convict.
But there's
Fairfax.
But there are so many other stories, and one I had to refer back to Ferguson, Missouri, 2014, when the Michael Brown was said to have had his arms raised, and he was approaching the police officer. Even the Washington Post fact checker had to rescind that story. But here's the problem: the damage is done. The careers are ruined. The story is out there, and I'm just what does concern me, and I know that I'm reaching for this one, Dan. But the whole issue of social media and the number of stupid videos and photos that are out there, what impact? There will be no one capable of running for public office, or
we're not just capable, but willing to.
Willing.
I mean, look what happened with Jeff Bezos.
Right.
Jeff Bezos apparently took, for lack of a better term, at least penis pics. Or had penis pics or whatever, and National Enquirer has them now, and so hey, he's the most richest man in the world, and he's claiming he's getting blackmailed by National Enquirer. I'm standing right in front of my glass doors that open out on my deck, so somebody wanted to photograph me right now, they can.
Right.
I mean, what are we all going to live in walled-off, closed-off buildings with Faraday cages around them so that no technology works? I mean, we're all going to have bad stuff. And so the quicker we all adapt to that, maybe grow up, the better.
Well, the other aspect of it is how it's being used, and we've seen this in the past, and I was watching Tucker Carlson earlier this week, and his criticisms of Senator Cory Booker, and his remarks related to Christine Blasey Ford, and as juxtaposed to his remarks related to the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, again shows how all of a sudden the media becomes a bludgeon, a stick to throttle your opponents, and it seems that, and we've talked about this in the past, that obviously the media is very willing to be used by the progressives, the liberals, the Democrats. All right, we're going to get back to more. I'm looking forward to hearing what the good, the bad, and the ugly are for the past week. Stay with us here on Viewpoints with Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. We're loading up for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Dan Gainor, of course, with us from newsbusters.org. Looking back at the past week, Dan, help me out. The good? What was the good?
This is a crazy week. So I'm going to say the good is not really all that good, but I like truth in advertising. So the good was a column by Farhad Manjoo from the New York Times that headlined "Abolish Billionaires," because the left has taken off its mask. The left has come out of the closet, so to speak, and they are just saying who the hell they are. And the old reds are the new greens. The old, the hardcore left is ascendant right now, and I mean they are whipping out the guillotines, and they are coming for anybody they don't like. And I appreciate the honesty, because in that honesty lies our only hope.
So the fact that we've got a full disclosure, in other words, and openness, transparency is the good for the week. Okay, I'll accept that one. All right, now for the bad.
Well, we've been talking about it, and that's this disaster in Virginia, but not just Virginia. It's all the Democratic candidates who are collapsing around us. If this were the Republican Party, you would not be able to move a square inch in America without being bombarded by this story. The fact that it is not that case, the fact that the media are not treating it like it is the end of the world, that they're not drawing comparisons, reminding people, oh, by the way, these dangerously racist Democrats are in the state of Virginia, the capital of which was the capital of the Confederacy. And, oh, by the way, that's just who they are. The Klan was founded by Democrats. And, that actually the Republican Party are the ones who voted both to end slavery and, voted for civil rights. And, I mean, that's the kind of storyline. If it's flipped around, they would be bombarding Republicans
right.
with. They would not be ceaseless in their criticism. Oh, there's racist Republicans. Well, okay, it's not racist Republicans now. It is, culturally appropriating Democrats. It is, racist Democrats. It is mean Democrats. It is sexually accused Democrats. It is a disaster. The party is, and then on a national level, you've got chaos, and that will take us to the ugly.
All right, to the ugly.
Just as I like truth in advertising, there's no human being in America the major media are more enamored with right now than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the most left-wing, witless member of Congress that we've had in a very long time. Certainly the most left-wing member of Congress I think we've had in my lifetime.
Right.
She is certifiably liberal and kind of certifiable, but she is pretty. She is charismatic. She knows how to play that card. I would say that comes from years of experience as a bartender. I mean, I'm not disparaging that. I mean, I think she actually knows how to play that card, and it works for her. But she came out this week with this Green New Deal. Came out yesterday with it. Last night, ABC, CBS, and NBC completely ignored it, even though it's the most certifiably insane document to come out of Congress in decades. I mean, it supposes changes taking place in our culture that would be so profound, so significant, so nuts that we would have to retrofit or replace every single building in America in 10 years. Now, there's no attempt at understanding what that would entail. Imagine, because you guys deal with this because of the storms and stuff,
right?
Fixing up buildings, and you see how difficult it is and how many months it takes. Imagine if you had to retrofit for energy or replace every single building just in your community. How many days, weeks, months, and years would take?
We don't have enough money.
I was going to say, then you're talking about doing that everywhere in the country. Then you're talking about all the different jurisdictions that you'd have to get zoning approval for, because states' rights and all. You'd have to run this by states unless you came up with a new constitutional amendment for the government to do this. And then you're talking about all the court challenges, because there would be more court challenges than you can possibly envision. And then there are people like me who live in historic homes who don't want you to mess with their historic home and not going to let you either mess with it or plow it under. And so then, how do you handle resistance to this idea? How do you handle the court challenges? How do you handle... this is insane. And that's only one little piece of it. She wants to get rid of air travel.
Right.
Get rid of, not... we want to downplay it or what? No. How do you get to Hawaii? I guess you take boat or
the bullet train. Bullet train. Yeah. It's going to be, this is interesting. I want to mention a story that's appearing in newsbusters.org by Clay Waters. New York Times, but he uses the word de-emphasize the truly ridiculous, implausible, and radical proposals in Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's 6-page Green New Deal, when it gave it front page play on Friday. And here's the headline: Unveiling a Green New Deal and ambition on a vast scale. Not stupidness or craziness on a vast scale. It's ambition on a vast scale.
The New York Times did a piece about how Trump is now dredging up old strategies, but a new villain, socialism. Socialism is not a new villain. Socialism has been a villain of the right for 100 years. This is not a surprise, folks. We've been why do you think we didn't want to deal with Castro? Why do you think we didn't want to deal with Venezuela? And then Ocasio-Cortez keeps on going, though. She's actually talking about how that we have no right to restrict anybody who is Latino.
Right.
That they're not illegal. They were here before us. This is home, and we have no right to restrict them or in any way, shape, or form. So what she's saying is anybody who is from the areas south of the Rio Grande, which is a lot of darn people. Okay? We're talking not just Mexico with 150 million people, but we're talking Venezuela with a 3 million person refugee population, or any other country there, can just walk into the United States and we have no right to tell them no? The kookiness here, and this is who the Democratic Party is now. Almost all the major Democratic presidential hopefuls have signed on to the Green New Deal, which says all the kookiness. And why is the press not saying this? Why is the press is treating this like it's legit, and then the hardcore left is actually coming out and saying, oh, well, the Green New Deal doesn't go far enough.
I'll tell you what, Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org with us this evening, with the good, the bad, and the ugly, the Green New Deal being the ugly. Stay with us here for more as we wrap it up with Dan Gainor, newsbusters.org, where, by the way, you can see these stories that we were just chatting about, including the one I might want to make mention of this, Abolish Billionaires. This, according to the New York Times opinion columnist. Great story by Julia Seymour. Stay with us here on Viewpoints with Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. I do appreciate our guest participation on Friday evenings. I haven't even thanked him personally, so I'll do it publicly. Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org. I really appreciate your participation, and I get a lot of comments about your observations here. And I'll wrap it up with just a quick note here. If you'd like to call in with a comment for Dan, feel free. 252 area code 247-7282. That's 247-7282. We didn't get into any additional calls earlier, but Dan, the whole aspect, and this is, I want to go back to something you alluded to earlier, Jeff Bezos, and apparently the potential of blackmail. It is interesting that the media has sort of kind of casually reviewed this story, but not fully exposed it. It's come out, of course, in the Washington Post. Pardon that pun. But the kicker here is I'm not seeing a lot of stories associated with this. Is this a matter of...
I think everyone is just so weirded out by it. This is one, I'm not going to so much blame the media. I think they're, how do you handle it? The Bezos piece he wrote about this is so grotesque and disturbing. And that doesn't blame Bezos. I don't want to get into people's personal lives, why they take photos of their junk or why somebody else might take photos of their junk. I don't know the particulars of it, who took photos of what.
Right.
It could have just been a private detective. People have a tendency to leave windows open, and if you got a powerful camera, you can take photos. So maybe that's all it is. But no matter what it is, it's just disturbing. I don't like the era we've moved into where we take the worst of L.A. Confidential, this fabulous movie, but awful subtext about blackmail and such, and take the worst of L.A. Confidential and drop it into the social media era. I don't want anyone to have their private information revealed without their permission. I don't want anyone to be harassed or blackmailed. It doesn't matter the political party or the opinion. One of the things I do on Twitter is I regularly report any attempts at doxing or revealing, documents about people or harassing like that of any side. I just don't tolerate it because I want people to play nice. It doesn't mean I like the people on the other side, but I don't want that way leads to disaster because if you treat everybody on the other side as an enemy, well, eventually someone's going to go too far on one side or the other, and then everybody really will be an enemy, and will be, Lebanon all over again, or Syria these days, or any other, nation that's tearing itself apart and people are trying to kill one another. And our enemies would like nothing more than that.
Yeah, that is, if you get down to it, the ultimate success story for the enemies. They're seeing us tear each other apart, and we're doing it so aggressively and I mean, without even, as you said a few moments ago, due process, no due process. They go right for the failure, and it's getting to the point now, and I brought up the topic earlier, and I just want to kind of wrap it up with this evening. We're seeing now the reviews of everything from yearbooks to messages, private messages, in a way that's destructive, and I'm a little concerned. The ultimate arbiter in this is going to be Google, Facebook, Twitter, maybe Yahoo. Whoever has the original data, they're now going to be in control of our lives.
Well, I mean, they already are. A few years ago, I saw the movie. The guy who's married to Huma Abedin.
Anthony Weiner?
Yeah, and saw the documentary Weiner, which is a truly fabulous and just bizarre documentary, because when they filmed it, he was trying to resuscitate his career.
That's right.
So he gave the documentary team complete access.
Right.
But then his career started to spiral down the pit again as they found new allegations, found out he had lied. And so they had unbelievable access. It was fantastic. But in the middle of the movie, one little nugget comes up. And it's the wedding where Weiner married Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's number one aide. Weiner's this rising star in the Democratic Party. And Bill Clinton performed the ceremony. Mm-hmm. Well, that photo and all photos of that event had been expunged on the Internet. And I mean expunged, I mean really? They're gone. And so I made a point of watching the movie. We screen grabbed the image, which you can legally, screen grabbed the image from the video and wrote about it just to put the video, put the image back in play that Bill Clinton is the one who married this couple, to draw the connection. Well, to this day, that photo, as it floats around the Internet now, and I've seen it a whole bunch of times, all of it tracks back to us because we put the photo back in play. The only reason, and I knew the ultimate victory was one time Drudge wrote about Weiner or Huma Abedin, somebody, he had a headline about it, and he used our photo. I'm like, yes. But that's how much control people have of information. The Clinton people had their own photographer, and they basically banned all photos from the event, so that every newspaper in the country that had written about the wedding had to remove the photos. All of them were gone. I mean, I looked and looked. And so that's why I became determined to put this back in play. But that's how powerful the world we move into now, where information can be deep-sixed beyond belief.
And we haven't touched on it, and I'm really not all that interested in delving into the other story of sleaze, but with the Woody Allen issue where he was suing on the grounds that his film was not going to be aired based on, quite frankly, his reputation. Dan, we are now in the world of, I'll use the word, transparency. I mean, there is no privacy anymore. And now, I'm not going to talk about Woody Allen.
About the only way to keep a secret in Washington is, among, three people is if you kill two of them or something like that.
Yes.
Some sort of version of that. And I mean, that's, yes. But even beyond that, if you tweeted at them, well, that tweet exists. Maybe somebody photographed it.
Yep.
I personally delete my tweets now on a regular basis very aggressively. It doesn't prevent someone from catching something I do. It just makes it more difficult.
Understood. But it just what's fascinating about all of this, and I don't know that the public is really comprehending this, but we have created, quite frankly, our own destruction because we have been so aggressive about sharing things with people, and in the process, now we are in the world of identity politics. As we wrap it up, that's the big one, is it not, Dan?
Yeah, we've basically basically we've created a global technological tree of knowledge, and not one of us has the knowledge, has the wisdom to handle it. Not one.
Dan Gainor of newsbusters.org with us this evening here on Viewpoints on the Talk Station. Dan, as always, thanks for being with us.